Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another one of our Discover Wildlife talks. Tonight's talk is going to be about the wonders of Uganda with Bret Charman. So Bret's one of our photographic leaders here at Wildlife Worldwide, and he leads photographic tours all over the world. He's won many awards. He's a brilliant photographer, and he really does know his stuff about lots of destinations, but Uganda is one that he's been to a number of times. And so yeah, he's very excited to talk to you about that tonight. So I'll hand over to Bret in a minute, but as always, if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A function to ask questions, and I will answer questions throughout, or I'll pass them to Bret at the end to answer for you. There will also be at the end, Bret will also talk about some of our trips that we have on offer. And there'll be a poll that you can use to request travel plans for some of those trips. So yeah, that's everything from me for now. So I'm going to pass you over to Bret so you can hear about all of the magical things you can see in Uganda. Over to you, Bret.
Thanks so much, Jordan. So, as Jordan mentioned, I am going to be talking to you about Uganda tonight. It's a beautiful part of the world, and it's somewhere, as Jordan has said, I'm very privileged to have been a number of times. The first time I actually went was on a self-drive safari. It was quite an adventure, not something I'd necessarily recommend to everybody, but if you're interested in finding out more about that, I'd be delighted to tell you another time. But today I'm going to give you a little bit of information about some of the primary destinations in Uganda and hopefully give you an idea of what you can see and just sort of give you an overview really to the sort of wildlife experience in the country, I suppose. The probably the one of the best names for Uganda that I know of is what Winston Churchill called it, which is the Pearl of Africa. And I think it's a really, really apt name because it is sort of just the most beautiful destination, I suppose, in East Africa. It's lush, it's green, it's rich, it's verdant. You can kind of grow everything there as well from a food production point of view, but also the wildlife is so varied. So I think it's a really great descriptive term and a wonderful name for it. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about some destinations and talk to you about how we get there. So we fly into a city called Entebbe. It's sort of just southwest of the capital Kampala. Entebbe is served by quite a few different airlines. So there's a few different routes you can go. And typically, when we arrive, we spend a night in Entebbe. It just makes things a little bit easier, and you'll understand a little bit more in a second why we do that. What I'm going to do on this occasion is I'm going to head north from Entebbe throughout this talk, go to Murchison Falls National Park, and then I'm going to work my way anti-clockwise down to Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, and then we'll end there. But it just gives you an idea, this map, of sort of some of the key areas and destinations we're going to visit. One of the best places is actually right by Entebbe itself. It's a swamp area, mainly papyrus swamp, called Mbamba. And it's one of the best places in the world to see the shoebill. For those of you that don't know what a shoebill is, it's this. It's a pretty unique, prehistoric looking bird. Kind of think of a dinosaur, and you're pretty much there. They're absolutely fantastic, and they specialize on eating catfish and invertebrates in the papyrus swamps, these floating swamps that sort of make up the Mabamba swamp and the edges of Lake Victoria. So these papyrus sort of floating swamps are in many different bays around Lake Victoria, and this is one of them, and it's prime shoebill country. They are really, really odd, without a doubt. They're an amazing species and one that I am absolutely passionate about. And they're not the easiest things to see necessarily, and it can take a little bit of work sometimes. So what we do is when we're staying in Tebe, the next morning we get up early, we drive a short distance down to sort of the peninsula, the northern side of the peninsula, so not the main Lake Victoria, but an inlet. And from there, we take a motorized dugout canoe and we head across to the swamp. And from there, we get into two smaller boats or one boat, depending on how big the group is or if you're tailor-made. Then obviously it will be different. You'll be on your own. And then you go looking for the shoebill in the swamp. Sometimes they are unbelievably cooperative, and the opportunities to get close and to photograph them are truly exceptional. it is incredible to see these big birds, and they're well over a meter in height, probably a meter and a half, when they're stood completely upright. And that bill, as you can see, is mighty impressive too. You get to see them hunting sometimes, but also preening and just sort of generally being quite weird is probably the best way to describe it. I've got a little video here, which hopefully should work. So let me just see if it will play. Let's try. Here you go. And it just kind of shows you they've got the nictitating membrane that goes across the eye, and they have this big bill. And it really is a bizarre sight when you see these birds for the first time. It's really unlike anything else in the world. I really don't know of anything that's comparable. And they are just real characters. Kind of scary in some ways, I'm not going to lie. And sometimes they will come remarkably close to your dugout canoes. Then there's no fear typically of people on these little boats. And they will approach within a meter or 2 meters, sometimes even closer. Typically, you're expecting to probably see them at 20 meters plus. So it gives you an idea. But if you're really, really lucky, then you might get that opportunity. Um, so from here, we there's a road basically that takes you north to Murchison Falls. Some people might fly. It's a more expensive way to do it, but the road journey is pretty comfortable. It's on good roads for the most part. And on the way is a place called Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary. It's a fantastic place to see white rhinos, and it's really the only place in Uganda you've got a chance of seeing any white rhinos. It's a beautiful place, and the rhinos here are particularly well habituated to people. So you don't go out on safari in a vehicle. Here you go out on safari by foot, and you walk with a trained ranger, a local ranger, and you go in search of the rhinos. The wonderful thing is in Ziwa is you get the white rhino in herds, which is actually quite normal. Black rhinos are notoriously grumpy and they prefer to be solitary, but white rhinos are actually quite sociable and they are grazers and they're often found in herds. And the long grassland here suits these animals perfectly. It's quite amazing getting close to such big mammals, obviously, on foot. And you really can get incredibly close. So these are just a few photos that I took on a trip to Ziwa. But to really give you a sense of the proximity you can get to these animals is with some wide angle shots. So here's a member of my photography group watching just one of the sort of groups of white rhinos within the reserve, within the sanctuary. And as you can see, the rhinos really are not bothered by your presence. And if you think that's close, sometimes the rhinos decide to take a little bit of a closer look, and they will actually walk right up to you. So this is actually a mother and a calf, and they literally walked within probably 5 to 10 yards of us, I suppose. You can see our guard at the front, our ranger. He is not armed, it's important to say, but he is very used to these rhinos. He knows each one as an individual. And when the rhinos came too close, he simply clapped his hands and let them know that we are there because they have very poor eyesight but fantastic hearing. And it was very much a, you're close enough, we're close enough, we don't want to get any closer. And the female actually decided she was quite curious and wanted to take a closer look, so we had to keep backing up. But at no point did I feel scared, it's worth saying. But it is an amazing experience to get so close to rhinos in a landscape such as this. I've done it a few times now, and if you are driving up to Murchison Falls, it's really worth adding onto your itinerary. You don't have to go for long. It's a stop you can make on your way to whichever lodge you're staying at Murchison Falls, and it really is a wonderful way to spend an hour or a couple of hours and enjoy just a really novel wildlife experience in Uganda. And I know a lot of people think of Uganda specifically for its primates, and we will get onto that in a little bit, but there is a lot more on offer. One park I'm not going to talk about today is Kadepo, which is up in the northeast, and it's because I don't have any personal experience there. However, Kadepo is a lot more of a traditional safari destinations. Think big plains with rocky outcrops, a bit like the Koppies in Tanzania or Kenya, but that's Kadepo. But there are other safari destinations, and one of them is Murchison Falls National Park. So Murchison Falls is situated sort of northwestish of Kampala. It's quite a long drive. It's a day's drive really to get there, and it's a really good safari destination for particularly for people that haven't been to this part of Africa before. If you have done Zambia or Botswana or Zimbabwe or South Africa, you probably aren't going to see a huge amount of things that you haven't seen before. There are a couple of species that are unique, and there's a couple of experiences that are unique. So it's very much worth considering, but it's not by any means going to be the best safari experience out there. It's fantastic nonetheless, but it's all centered around the Nile and the Great Lakes as well, it's worth saying. So most of the lodges here are situated on the banks of the Nile, and just up from here is a fabulous fall, which is Murchison Falls, funnily enough, hence the name of the park. These are really powerful falls, and I'll show you some pictures of those in a little bit. But the Nile here separates the lodges from the main area of the safari zone of the national park. And the lodges here are very comfortable. There's a big range from sort of high end to medium and low end as well. So if you're on a tailor-made trip, you can tailor it to suit. If you're on a group tour, we usually sort of go for the middle range to mid-high properties. And we always have guides from a centralized location. So that's worth mentioning. Typically in Uganda, you don't have a guide at each destination. They will come around with you, or they will be sent to the destination to meet you if you fly and take you around that area. And then it might be, for example, you get on another light aircraft and fly to the next destination, or alternatively, you'll stay with your guide and then move to the next destination. So as you can see, exactly what you'd expect from an African safari for those of you that are familiar. For those of you that aren't, it's very, very comfortable. Mosquitoes here are prevalent, and we do advise that you use mosquito nets, obviously, wherever you go. And it is a malarial zone as well, it's worth noting. So if you are one to take anti-malarials, then I highly suggest you do in Uganda. So this gives you an idea of the landscape in the safari area of Murchison Falls. It is sort of an iconic savanna landscape. It's lush and green at certain times of the year and drier at others, much like the Masai Mara or Tanzania. It's home to the big four, I suppose. You get buffalo, buffalo and giraffe, buffalo, rhino, elephant, lion, and leopard, but no rhino are there. So it just gives you an idea of what's on offer. Buffalo are pretty common, and giraffe are incredibly common. But other things that are slightly less common are the hartebeest. They are quite common locally, but as a whole in the area, they're not that sort of widespread. But they are pretty nervous, the hartebeest, it's worth saying. So if you get an opportunity to photograph them, make sure you do. It's actually a fantastic place to see these guys, though. This is an Orobi, a very beautiful and dainty antelope, a really pretty species, one of my favorite. You might well have seen them in other areas as well, particularly in Kenya, in some grassy areas in Zambia, they're quite prevalent too. So they're not a rare antelope, but they're probably less seen than some of the more familiar species such as impala and waterbuck, say. So it's got a little bit of a difference to it from some other parks. And it really is a fabulous place to see giraffes on open plains. Probably some of the biggest herds of giraffes I've ever seen are in Murchison Falls. And it's just something a little bit different, I suppose, from your Serengeti destinations or Masai Mara or South Luangwa in Zambia. Different habitat, and seeing giraffes in the open like this is really quite wonderful. However, what Uganda is well known for in terms of sort of antelopes, herbivores, is the Ugandan kob. If anybody knows of lechwe or of puku, for example, they're all part of the same family. So Ugandan kob are incredibly prevalent here, but they also are in another park as well, which I'll get onto in a bit, which is Queen Elizabeth National Park. It's an amazing sight. Sometimes you can get herds of 300 or 400 of these together, particularly when they're rutting. They have these lecking stands and they will fight off any individuals, and it's quite impressive to see. But the youngsters are very pretty, very sort of doe-eyed and big-eared, very pretty antelope. Typically have these black lines on their legs, so they're quite easily identifiable. And they're found throughout this savanna landscape. There are elephants here too, but typically I found that the elephants in Murchison Falls are a little bit more nervous. And if you do see them, it's usually along the river. So it just gives you an idea of the differentiation maybe between some other parts of Africa. If you've seen southern ground hornbills, those mighty big black birds on the ground in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, southern Africa as a whole, South Africa particularly, you'll know that they have a red facial sort of coloration and that sort of big red throat as well. Here you get the Abyssinian ground hornbill, and instead they have a bit of blue on them. So they're quite different, but at the same time easily recognizable. A beautiful bird and fascinating to watch. Amazing as they're working their way across the plains, usually in family groups, and they're finding beetles, invertebrates galore, and sort of small reptiles, even small birds, and you'll see them throwing them up in the air, and seeds too, I should say, and then swallowing them as well. So they're a fantastic thing to watch and pretty reliably seen in Murchison Falls. One species that many of you probably aren't familiar with, which is quite common here, is the Patterson's monkey. They like this savanna habitat of Murchison Falls. And for those of you with a particular interest in primates, this might be a new species for you. So Murchison Falls offers you the best chance, probably in Uganda, to see this species. And they are quite characterful things. And they spend a lot of time on the ground, a bit like vervet monkeys, working their way from tree to tree. And then you'll see them perched up. When they go into the grass, they can be a little bit tricky to see just because of the thickness, the density of the grass, and their coloration. As you can see, they blend in pretty well. But they're a really beautiful monkey to see and well worth it if you want to see something slightly different. Now, there are many places in Africa that claim to be home to the only tree climbing lions in Africa. I can assure you there are many places in Africa that lions climb trees, and there are two in Uganda. One of them is Murchison Falls, and here you can see a lioness asleep in a sausage tree, and the other place is Queen Elizabeth National Park, which I'll get onto in a little bit. But it is not a reliable place here to see them, but they are known to do it. And if an opportunity arises, obviously, it's a fabulous sight. Seeing a full-grown lioness stretched out in a tree is quite a sight. They definitely aren't natural in trees, unlike leopards, and they will often sort of be a little bit cumbersome, clumsy. It's not unusual to see lions falling out of trees if they're trying to climb them. But when they're settled like this, it really is quite a magical thing to see. For those of you that have been to Ndutu in Tanzania, they often have lions. Tarangire, even the Mara lions will climb trees. In Botswana too. So yeah, it's not an unusual behavior. And in actual fact, I would say it's becoming more common. So it's always fun to see, and it is an option and a possibility, I suppose I should say, when you are in Murchison. These are the falls themselves. These are the falls that give the park its name. And the best way to see them is on a boat trip. You go up the river and you get a full frontal view of the falls. There is a viewing platform there as well you can go to, but it's not, you can't really see very much because of the sheer force of the water. It's meant to be one of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth. And basically, the whole River Nile is funneled through this tiny little gorge, this tiny canyon, and the water comes thundering through at high speed. The noise is pretty remarkable. But if you go above it, although you can experience it and get the full sound, you don't see very much just because of the sheer amount of spray coming off of the falls. So when you get down, you can see it a little bit better, and it gives you a sense of scale and the ferocity too, I suppose. You can see the water just foaming out of it at high speed. These boat trips are great though because they actually offer a whole other world of wildlife watching opportunities. It's a fantastic place to watch hippos, hundreds and hundreds of hippos along the Nile here. Very relaxed for the most part. Sometimes if you get a little bit close and surprise them, they will disappear. But if you ask your boat skipper to be patient and sort of not rush things, you can get some wonderful hippo watching opportunities. But for me, the reason to do a boat trip here is for the bird life. It's pretty exceptional. African fish eagles galore, storks galore, kingfishers galore as well, and bee eaters too. This is a red-throated bee eater, arguably I think one of the most beautiful in Africa. There's also another one around in Uganda, which is a particularly sought-after species, which is the black bee eater. You're better off seeing those on the edge of the rainforests. But these species are pretty prevalent, particularly around Murchison Falls, the red-throated bee eater, and really, really beautiful. Fantastic place to see darters. Probably one of the best places I've ever been to see a darter. And as I said, kingfishers. You can see pied kingfisher. This is a malachite kingfisher, but you can see pretty much all the species that you would expect with East Africa are possible here. And you can have a really, really good time. However, It's also another opportunity for those of you visiting to see shoebill. Now, here they're a little bit less reliable than they are at Mabamba swamps, and there is a section of papyrus swamp, basically where the Nile flows into the lake, and the lake itself sort of provides obviously calmer water, and the papyrus sort of beds grow. And here you get shoebills from time to time. If you're going to do it and you want to see shoebills, I recommend going in the morning. And this is because they haven't yet been disturbed by local fishermen. But you can get some fantastic views of these birds. So it is another fantastic destination and it offers something a little bit different from elsewhere in Uganda, but also other parts of East Africa. And I think what's really lovely about Uganda as a destination is you don't need to combine it with other countries because you've got this opportunity to do something like a shoebill, and then you can go to Murchison Falls and see some species that you might not see, for example, at Chibali National Park, which I'll get onto, and again at Queen Elizabeth and at Bwindi. You can really create an all-encompassing itinerary in one country. You don't have to jump from place to place. It does mean sometimes there are some slightly longer drives, or some internal flights, which do put the cost up a little bit, but it does make it a sort of an all-encompassing safari destination. So from Murchison Falls, what I'm going to do now is take you southwest to Chibali Forest. Chibali Forest is probably the best place in Uganda to see chimpanzees. However, it's worth saying there is another destination on the edge of Murchison Falls, which is called Budongo. So there are a couple of different places. It's a little bit newer, up and coming in terms of chimpanzee tourism, but Chibali Forest is probably the place to go. Another one that's sometimes spoken about is Chayambura, the gorge to the south of Chibali, and on the edge of Queen Elizabeth. And I'll briefly talk about that just to give you a heads up. But Chibali Forest is our next destination. And personally, I love to stay here. This is Primate Lodge. It's set within the national park, surrounded by rainforest. And for me, it's one of the most beautiful lodges anywhere in Africa. This is the communal area with the gardens, where you see the chairs on the patio. That's actually outside the dining area and the bar. There's a fire pit at the right of the screen. There's some cushions you might just be able to make out. And to the left is the lounge area with a fireplace. It's all completely open to the natural world, and it makes it fantastic for primates. In the grounds here, it's not unusual to see red-tailed monkey, black and white colobus, red colobus. What else are you going to get? Ugandan mangabey. It really is a fantastic thing. Even baboons as well will wander through. On top of that, you get agama lizards all over the place here in the grounds. You'll get black and white cast hornbill, all sorts of things all over. Sunbirds, bee eaters. It's an amazing place. It's a beautiful, beautiful lodge, and it has all the facilities you'd expect of a modern lodge. I can assure you that their clothes washing service is exceptional, as is their boot cleaning service, which is much needed when you're doing some chimpanzee treks, which we're going to get onto. But it just gives you an idea of the quality of the accommodation on offer in Uganda, but particularly at certain lodges. There are some absolutely beautiful properties. This is what we've come to see. This is the chimpanzee. The chimpanzee is definitely one of the wildlife highlights in the country. You have the opportunity to trek in Chibali in search of these incredible primates, and you will follow individuals through the forest. It's worth noting that the terrain here is undulating hills. If it's raining, it can be quite slippery, so you will need a good pair of walking boots. The lodges do provide gaiters typically, so you don't need to take your own gaiters. And you will find that a stick might be useful. The lodges are super accommodating and will do their best to help you, giving you all the advice that you need. And the guides as well are really, really fantastic. Chimpanzees, in my opinion, are a little bit scary in terms of they're unpredictable, but it also makes them absolutely fabulous to watch. So you can expect to get chimps lying down, resting on drier days. They don't like getting wet on the forest floor. They don't like getting muddy. So you'll often find them lying on the floor and just being themselves when it's drier on the ground. And you can get some unbelievably close and intimate encounters with chimps. These animals are completely habituated to people. They've spent many years habituating chimpanzee families, and they're still continuing to do it. And it just means that these animals kind of go about their business without really paying you too much attention. You can get incredibly close. There is a recommended distance that you always try and adhere to. Sometimes the chimpanzees don't follow the guidelines, and they will come closer. If we can, we try and move out the way, unless the guide says otherwise, and then we will actually try and stay still and let the chimpanzee pass. So this just gives you an idea of how close they can get. Hang on a second, I just need to move something out the way so I can press play. So here's a chimpanzee walking straight past a couple of members of my group. Um, so although ideally we try and keep our distance, they might just come within a few meters of you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. They're fast, they're agile, they can climb trees, they come down trees, and it all makes it pretty amazing. What I really, really love with chimps is sitting back, kind of not getting too close, and watching them ponder the world, look for food, just sit back and relax and watch them in their environment. They're in this incredible rainforest, and it is beautiful, beautiful rainforest. It's home to elephants, forest buffalo, leopard, all sorts of incredible invertebrates and herps as well, if you're into your snakes and your lizards. It's an amazing place. What I would say is you very rarely see anything other than the chimpanzees and monkeys. Sometimes, though, the chimpanzees will hunt the monkeys. So it is worth taking that in mind that if the chimps decide to move, they move with speed. But when you get them in this environment, it's really wonderful just sitting back. Sometimes put your cameras away, enjoy it, revel in the surrounds because there are sounds all around you, whether it's the chimpanzees screaming or it's the sound of birdsong and insect life in the forest. There's so much here. It's a real sort of overload on the senses, but in the best possible way. It is absolutely fabulous, and I really, really can't recommend it enough. I would say if you're interested in photography, chimpanzees are actually probably the easiest primate to photograph, particularly when they're on the ground. When they're in the trees, it's a little bit more tricky, obviously. They can go a long way up and they can move at speed, as I said. But when they're on the ground, they can be really obliging and give you some incredible opportunities to take pictures, but also just some amazing memories. I think getting close to our closest cousins in the natural world is a real privilege, and not many people get to do it. So if you do get the chance, I highly recommend it. If you're doing a photo tour with me, we make sure we do two treks with chimpanzees to try and maximize the opportunities, particularly if it rains. Chimps, as I said, don't really like getting wet, which is a bit of an issue when you live in the rainforest. And they will often keep moving or stay high in the trees during the rain. Whereas when it's drier, you have a better chance to find them on the ground. And again, we usually try and do a morning and an afternoon. And what that means is it gives us the opportunity to sort of maximize our chances. On a tailor-made, obviously we can tailor it to suit, and on our other group tours, you normally have good opportunities to see them too. So it's not an issue, and you can expect to have standout encounters. If you're really lucky, you get some youngsters, and they can be really cheeky, and they can also be quite curious. So you can have some really, really great encounters. This is an infant, obviously, and he just decided to climb a vine in front of me and just watch me. Not long afterwards, he scooted up the vine at high speed and then started doing ridiculous trapeze acts high up above me in the canopy, really trying to show off and cement his place as an acrobatic genius. I certainly couldn't compete, and I didn't even bother taking pictures because it was actually just too much fun to watch him go about his business. And that's what's fantastic about chimps is when they go about their business, you can just enjoy some really, really fantastic behavior. And what I love is when you get these really intimate moments when they're completely relaxed, they're not paying you any attention, and you can just look into their eyes and just be mesmerized by what's in front of you. When they fall asleep, you know an animal is completely relaxed in your presence. And it's not unusual for chimps to do that right in front of us. It really is a special, special place. And I can't recommend it enough if you're going to Uganda. As I said, It's not just about the chimpanzees, though. So, other than the chimpanzees, we have things like the hornbills, but nearby, just outside Chibali, itself is a place called the Bogodi Wetlands Swamp. It's a fantastic locally run initiative to protect swamp forest. And on top of that, it has a wealth of primates and birds as well that it supports. So we always try and make sure we pay a visit to the project, and it can provide us with some of the best opportunities to see the bird life as well as the primates. So as well as the hornbills, we get to see great blue turquoise such as this, a wealth of other species as well. Sometimes we see kingfishers, trogons are also even possible. It's a really beautiful place. But for me, it's about the primates that we come here. And as I said before, actually a surprisingly good area to see baboons. I think normally we associate baboons with savanna habitats, but actually they're surprisingly reliable in these rainforest habitats and they do incredibly well. We typically see them walking along the roads, but around Bogodi, you also get them just hanging around in the trees, watching the world go by and looking for food as well on the ground. So it gives you a little bit of a different take. One of the other species you get around here is the black and white colobus monkey or galetza. And these guys are amazing. They're also potential chimp food, not so likely as the red-tailed monkeys or the colobuses or the mangabeys, but it is possible. And they are really fantastic species to watch. And you often see them in trees around the lodge, but also around the Bogodi wetlands. And another monkey is the Loess monkey. So if any of you have seen blue monkeys in Africa, they're all part of the same family. And the Loess monkey is particularly good. You can see them here with relative ease at Chibali, but also at Bwindi, which again, I'll get onto in a little bit for you. So after Chibali Forest, I'm going to go to Chimboda Gorge, which is just to the south. Chimboda Gorge became famous for its chimpanzees, and this is because it's an isolated patch of forest. Basically, it's surrounded by savanna. The gorge itself used to have rainforest, sort of cloud forest at one end, and over time it was deforested. And so the savanna was left around the gorge, and then at the one end of the gorge where the forest continued, that forest has subsequently gone. So Chimboda Gorge is a magical place. What it has meant is that chimpanzees have become isolated in the gorge itself. And the issue with this is that the chimpanzees are only one family strong. So the genetic diversity is quite limited. So although you can see chimpanzees here, it's not necessarily the easiest because you have to just keep going up and down a gorge and hope that they're in the trees on the floor at the time you're there. Or you just have to get lucky and they're in the right place. But it is still a wonderful place to visit. And if you're passing by Chimboda from Chibali, to example, for a shasha, then sometimes it's worth a visit. You never know what you might see. It's also quite bizarre in the sense that in the gorge bottom is the river flowing through it, where you can see hippos as well as chimpanzees. But the chimps here live in a tiny patch of rainforest. And so if you're lucky, you can be treated to some wonderful views. The funny thing is that if you look from side to side, you might suddenly see just a big sand cliff. So you might get a patch of beautiful forest, but then to one side is just a cliff face. It's quite a strange world to be in. And yeah, it gives a slightly different perspective on chimpanzee viewing in the wild. As I said, there are hippos around. So it isn't unusual when you're walking along and you're walking along the river for a hippo to suddenly come up next to you. It's worth saying that you are with a trained armed guard throughout this. I should say, you are on Chibali as well. The guards are armed in Chibali. The reason for the arming here and in Chibali is for large mammals, not for chimpanzees. It's for elephants, buffalo, hippos. Never had any issues. Don't know anybody that has had any issues, but that's why they're armed. Don't be alarmed if you see someone walking around with an assault rifle or a rifle. It's just common practice in Uganda. So don't worry about that. Uganda from here is primarily the wildlife watching opportunities and the wildlife destinations are clustered around the southwest. As you can see, Chibali's in the southwest, Chimbora's in the southwest, and our next stop is Queen Elizabeth National Park, which is also in the southwest. And to the south of that is Bwindi, which is sort of the piste de resistance. It's a wonderful place to go. And Queen Elizabeth offers another sort of savannah environment. It's actually a very diverse park. It has some beautiful dry forest. It has rainforest. It has swamp, savanna grassland, open woodland. It's a pretty diverse habitat. And because of that, it has some weird species that you can see. It's not unusual here to see forest buffalo interbreeding with Cape buffalo, African buffalo. You can see the giant forest hog here, which is a really weird species. Red river hogs aren't unheard of. Bush pigs, even some real strange ones. And you just never know. And it's a really fantastic place to see big herds of topi as well. Typically, I don't have any pictures of those in here, but you can see sort of a lot more topi than you'd expect to see anywhere else in East Africa. And they seem to be isolated here, which is a bit of an oddity. You get the hartebeest up in Murchison, but then topi down here. So it's a bit of a strange place, but it's a wonderful place to visit. We stay in a place called the Shasha Wilderness Camp. It's on the banks of a river. It's tucked away in a beautiful patch of forest, and it's a wonderful property. The tents themselves are incredibly comfortable. Everything you could want in a safari tent is in this safari tent. And honestly, the situation is heavenly. You get elephants coming right past, hippos every night, unbelievable bird life, monkeys coming through, even lions and leopards are here. So there is an awful lot on offer in this beautiful, beautiful park, in this beautiful lodge, sorry, this camp. And this just gives you an idea of sort of the communal area. There's a seating area at the back and this nice dining area and a bar as well. So it really is a very, very comfortable place to stay. Now, things in Ashasha are a little bit different in the sense that they don't do safaris in quite the same time ways that you might do in other parts of East Africa. So you will get up early and you'll go for a normal morning safari, but it might not be very long, and then we might come back for breakfast. After that, we might then head out and go for a mid-morning drive to sort of before lunch. And this is because of tree climbing lions. And tree climbing lions are usually only up in the trees once the heat of the day basically builds up. So we get up early and for a normal safari, and hopefully you get beautiful sunrises over this incredible savanna landscape. And it's a really good place to see elephants here. Whether it's in the morning or in the evening, you quite often get big herds of elephants. There are some lovely big bulls too. But it's a really good place to see elephants. It's probably the best place, in my opinion, in Uganda to see elephants. Um, but here, like in Murchison Falls, it's also fantastic for Ugandan cob. You can get big, big herds of them. And again, these rutting stands, they will fight off any potential males. So you can get some really fantastic behavior and some really handsome individuals, such as this boy. And they are a really, really prevalent and very common species found across Queen Elizabeth National Park. It's also a great place to see waterbuck. They're very, very easily seen around here, and when you get big males, they're particularly impressive. They favour sort of the more swampy edges of the savannah, but you can see them anywhere at any time, and they're pretty reliable. So you can expect to see these guys with relative ease. I talked about agamas at Chibali. You also get them here, so it's always worth having a look on any log and seeing if you can get these beautiful lizards as they're sort of displaying to one another. And where you get smaller animals, obviously you get bird life that preys upon them. So things like this, such as brown snake eagles, but it's also good for a whole host of different eagles. One of my favorite is the long-crested eagle, absolutely beautiful bird, really, really stunning bird. And you just never know what's going to show up, and you can get some really fantastic sightings. In recent years, for some reason, it's become pretty reliable for leopards. It's I'm not sure why. It's not really what you'd consider ideal habitat for leopards, but I've had some fantastic sightings there. In one drive, I've had a few different leopards to one every few days. So if you spend a couple of days, you have a good chance of seeing leopard. And some of my best ever leopard sightings have been here. This female climbed this tree. We actually saw her with some cubs in a thicket and she came flying up the tree. This is actually after she climbed the tree. A really beautiful cat. And the moment that she climbed the tree, she decided to have a little bit of a stretch and just stop and take a look at us and watch the world go by. She was a young leopard in her absolute prime. And you really can't ask for a better leopard encounter than this. It's pretty exceptional. So yeah, hopefully if you spend a bit of time in the Ashusha sector of Queen Elizabeth National Park in particular, you have a good chance. There is another sector up in the northeast of Queen Elizabeth, it's worth mentioning. But personally, I like Ashusha. It's a little bit quieter, less camps around, and the sightings you get can be all to yourself, which I think makes it a little bit more special. And as I mentioned, it's a great place for tree climbing lions. It's sort of what Shasha became famous for, I suppose. It has a population of tree climbing lions, and as I said, we might do these mid-morning to lunchtime safaris, and it's specifically to find these guys. They climb these beautiful old fig trees and some sausage trees as well, and that's what they're trying to do is get up off the ground in the heat of the day, keep themselves cool, but also it just gives them a chance to spot prey. So the higher up you are, the further you can see. So it's not uncommon to see the lions high up in a tree, escaping the heat of the day and keeping one eye open every now and then for a potential meal as they wander by. It's not to say you won't see them on the ground, but this is kind of one of the reasons we stop in a shusha. So if you're ever going that way, please do take a look. I'm going to end on what's probably Uganda's big selling point for most people, which is windy impenetrable forest. It's an area of montane rainforest or cloud forest. It's home, obviously, to the mountain gorilla, and it is probably one of the absolute musts for anybody with a passion for wildlife. Seeing a gorilla for the first time on foot in close proximity is an experience you will never forget. Even now, just thinking back on some of the sightings, I'm getting goosebumps and the hairs are standing on the back of my neck. It is out of this world in terms of wildlife experiences. The lodges, if you can, stay in the lodges right on the edge of the forest or in the forest. This is Bahoma Lodge. This is my preferred lodge, but we will happily arrange particularly tailor-made trips to other lodges if you prefer. But for me, this is particularly special. It's within the national park. Sometimes it's not unheard of. I've not had it, but it's not unheard of for gorillas to be in the grounds of the lodge itself. And it's just in the rainforest, in the clouds. It's an amazing experience and a beautiful lodge at that. The living area of the lodge and the dining area is a stilted building. It's raised up so it gives you views across the landscape. It provides you with great opportunities to photograph and see monkeys, some fantastic bird life. For example, African blue flycatcher is a bird that's commonly seen around here. You also get great blue turco here from time to time. I should say, by the way, the great blue turco picture earlier on was taken by my colleague Ben Sutcliffe. I forgot to mention that. And yeah, it's a fabulous place to sit back and unwind, but the rooms themselves aren't bad either. They're very comfortable with the most beautiful decoration and bathrooms too. And it can get pretty chilly here at night. So there is a lovely fire in the communal space, but there's also usually a hot water bed in your bed ready for you in the evenings. It's a really lovely touch, but there are also baths in some of the rooms, which after a gorilla trek, I can tell you is pretty special. What makes Bahoma even better is they offer a massage service. So if you've had a long day trekking for gorillas, you will indeed be able to have a massage. Now, one thing that's worth saying about the gorilla treks, oh, and it's a really good place to see Loess monkey as well. Sorry, I should have said. One thing that's worth mentioning about gorilla treks is that there are different ability levels for trekking. So typically there is an easy trek, a medium trek, and a long trek. The easy trek is usually maximum of 2 hours, usually less. And the terrain can be tough going still, but it's a short distances involved. And they will try and put people suitable in each category. It's also worth saying that sometimes you have to drive to the start of your trekking point. So you might not be heading out first thing in the morning. It might be a little bit later. What I would also say is the lodges provide gaiters here, important. Take a walking stick with you. I also recommend taking gardening gloves. Definitely wear long sleeves, very good walking boots, well fitted walking boots that you're comfortable walking in, and long sleeve shirts. Um, Primarily because there are lots of spiky things in the rainforest. There are also ants and things like that, and it's better to be well covered than sort of exposed. And it can also get pretty hot and humid as well. So you want good breathable clothing. Definitely take waterproofs for you and for your camera gear, and even a cover for your backpack. And finally, employ a local porter. A local porter will make all the difference. It's usually 25 or $30, and they are worth their weight in gold. I cannot recommend them enough. All the money goes directly to them, and they will only work sort of, I can't remember exactly what it is now, but it's usually, I think, one day every few weeks. So that money, that 25 to $30 for them is life changing, and it usually goes towards their children's education or something like that. So it's a really well run scheme. And if you look at the statistics behind Uganda's conservation efforts with gorillas, it all comes into including the local community, and that includes these porters. So I highly recommend you employ a porter to help you out. The landscape around Windy is this primarily tea. And the reason for that is gorillas don't eat tea. And so it reduces the lack of conflict between people and gorillas, which might come out of the forest, for example, to raid some tasty crops. And there are photographs of gorillas literally eating an entire village's crops. And the same happens with chimpanzees too around Chibali. And I should say there are also chimpanzees in Bwindi, but you very rarely see them. In fact, there are even elephants in Bwindi. I have never seen one, but I have seen signs of them. So they are around. And again, there are armed guards in Bwindi. Most of these guards are actually to protect the gorillas. They are hugely valuable to Ugandan tourism. A huge part of their annual income, their GDP, comes from gorilla tourism. And so they are very well protected. And because of that, their numbers have done very well in recent years and are continuing to increase. But it's not unusual to see heavily armed individuals. So do not worry, they are there for the gorillas' protection primarily, not yours, which is always quite interesting. But another thing you get around Bwindi is worth saying is a pangolin rescue centre. And if you've never seen a pangolin before, I highly recommend you take a visit. Again, it's local community run and it is doing fantastic work at rehabilitating pangolins in the wild, from the wild, and releasing them again. And if you're lucky enough, you might get to be invited to a release or to a pangolin exercise session. These are tree climbing pangolins, so they have this beautiful long sort of semi-prehensile tail, and they all roll into a ball for protection like the ground pangolin, but absolutely mesmerizing. And I have a little video. I'm not sure how well it will play with the current connection, but we'll try nonetheless. So let's see. But this pangolin is wild, but about to be released. And we just let it come to us. We didn't approach it. We walked 20 meters ahead, I'd say, and it just walked straight towards us. And the reason they're doing this is to let it feed naturally and build up its strength. I can tell you, I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life because this pangolin sniffed my knee. And there's a little bit of a theme, which I'll get onto in a minute with this. And it walked straight under me. It was something I will never forget. It was amazing. But I do highly recommend if you're around the Bwindi area, particularly the Bahoma area, and you get the chance, please do go. They will ask for a donation. Again, all the money goes back to conservation. It goes back into rescuing pangolins and helping to release them back into the wild. So I highly recommend you take a visit. But once you get up into the forest, it is a magical place. It can be hot sometimes and humid, sometimes it can be cold and wet. It's very hard to predict, and even in the dry season, it can rain and the temperature can drop drastically. And in the rainy season, it can be very hot and dry. It's very hard to predict, as I just said. So make sure you are well prepared. We'll send you a full packing list. We recommend you try and take everything on it, but don't be alarmed. There are walking sticks and gaiters at the lodges, and definitely make the most of them. But of course, this is what we're going for, the gorillas. And I can tell you now, the first time I saw a gorilla, I cried. I remember walking up over a ridgeline and coming back down the other side and seeing a silverback probably 20 meters away through the forest, and I froze and I didn't move a muscle. It was incredibly emotional and moving. And the guide turned around and looked at me and he was like, "What are you looking at?" And I explained that I was mesmerized by the silverback gorilla 20 yards in front of me. And he said, "Well, why is that impressive?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, look to your left." And within a meter of me was a beautiful female with this young gorilla. And I just literally collapsed pretty much. I was an emotional wreck. But I was so focused on this gorilla in front of me that I hadn't noticed this absolutely amazing animal to my left. And I think my world changed that day, and I don't think it will ever be the same again. Because once you get close to gorillas, nothing is ever the same again. You're meant to keep proximity. We do wear masks, it's worth saying, to protect or to reduce the chance of transmission of disease, obviously. They're very closely related, as are chimpanzees. Again, we wear masks. And it is just the most unbelievable, remarkable, breathtaking moment when you get your first glimpse of a gorilla. And the more time you spend with them, the more time you want to spend with them. I am very privileged. I have been able to do multiple treks in search of gorillas. And I can tell you, I get just as excited now as the first time I went. And for me, part of the magic of gorilla trekking is actually the trek itself, the anticipation, the excitement, the adventure going through the rainforest, um, the thick mud, the machete wielding guide in front of you, carving a path through the forest to find these absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful apes. They are truly, truly magnificent. And when you get close to a big male gorilla, it's unlike anything else. This is a guy called Makara. He was still alive last year. I don't know whether he is this year. He was the head of the Habinyanja family. He last year when I saw him, he was coming into retirement, so a new silverback was working alongside him. And this is the difference between gorilla and chimpanzee society. Chimpanzee society is quite violent. For the most part, gorilla society is very peaceful, not always, but mostly. And there is often this peaceful transition where a silverback realizes he's kind of past his prime and he will almost allow or train up a younger male to become the new silverback, and then he will actually be allowed to stay and he will support the younger silverback a bit like a blackback. So it's quite an amazing transition when this happens. And this is currently, well, it was last year when I saw them, what was going on with the Habinyanja family. So it gives you an idea of sort of the complexity of the social structures, but also how much there is to watch, learn, and discover. I would say the first time I saw gorillas, I took less than 300 photos. That probably sounds like a lot of photos. Bearing in mind my camera will take 15 photographs in a second, I can assure you it was not a lot of photos. I was dumbstruck. I was mesmerized by what was going on in front of me. This individual, this youngster, tried to touch my camera and then tried to touch my face, which is a big no-no. So I had to keep moving away. But it was the most remarkable thing. And I will never forget that moment in my life. Having a wild baby animal have complete and utter trust in you as a human being and having no fear, and in actual fact, just curiosity and complete sort of acceptance of your presence is just something amazing. And what I really loved was when it realized it couldn't touch any of us. It tried to touch multiple people in the group. It went back onto the log and it did a backflip. Showing off, why not? If I can't play with you, then I'll just show off to you instead. And hopefully this video gives you an idea of the proximity you can get to a silverback. So this is one of my clients in Bwindi. We actually were given a short trek this day and it ended up being within a few meters. It was quite ridiculous because the gorillas decided to come to the road. He'd just been told to move away. So the gorilla actually um, actually approached us And then the guide said to us, maybe it's worth coming back, give him some space. So we did. And he, as you can see, was completely unaware of us almost, completely undisturbed, not a fear or concern about us at all, which is really, really what you want. And here I actually have our local guide, one of the Ugandan Wildlife Authority guys, using my camera to take pictures of gorillas. He didn't ask, he just picked up my camera and started taking pictures. But I thought it was a really wonderful scene, and it kind of shows you sometimes what the habitat can be like, and actually how sort of trusting they are of us in the sense that we can just stand and watch a whole family go about their business without any concern whatsoever. I love it when you get to see the environment, when you get these beautiful sort of environmental scenes and you can see them from a little bit further away. I think it's really magical to get that disconnect as well as the intimacy you will also get. But undoubtedly, it's those really close encounters that stick with you for many, many years to come. And the silverbacks in particular and the youngsters are very, very obliging indeed. And here's one more video for you of I said about the knee thing, about a little bit of a theme with the pangolin sniffing my knee. Well, this gorilla decided that my knee was pretty fascinating. This is a youngster, and it came and sniffed me. I was stood still as per the instructions of my guide, trying to keep my distance. The gorilla approached me, and the guide told me to stay still and let them pass. It's worth saying that was not the only gorilla that passed me. In actual fact, I had the whole family sniff my knee, including the silverback, this gorilla's mother, its auntie, its cousins, its siblings. It was really quite incredible. It was, again, one of those moments where you pinch yourself and you can't quite believe it's happening. So I'm going to end it on these beautiful, tight-knit, close-up portraits of gorillas. This is a silverback. I just love the textures on their faces. You can look into their eyes, but you can't. You're advised not to because it's a sign of aggression. So when they stare at you, you sort of gaze away. But as soon as they gaze to one side, your eyes can't help but lock on to this incredible gaze that they give you, and you will be lost. Once you're looking in an eye of a gorilla, I can assure you, well, if you're as soppy as me, you'll probably cry, but you will be lost. There is just something magical about these animals, and the trust and understanding that you can have with them is unlike anything I've experienced anywhere else in the animal kingdom. So I implore you to visit Uganda, and I promise you, you will not forget it. It is out of this world. So, we're coming to the end of the evening. So there's a couple of trips that I'd like to suggest if you're interested. We have Gorillas in Uganda, which is a tailor-made trip specifically focused on the gorillas themselves. So it's a pretty much a fly-in, fly-out, high-speed kind of affair. 7 days in total. There's a Best of Uganda, which is a longer, tailor-made option, including multiple treks, amazing experiences visiting many different national parks. It's a, sort of the ultimate way to see on a tailor-made basis, super comfortable and high-end. Then we have Uganda's Unforgettable Wildlife, which is a group tour, only 6 people, 13 days from 6,895. There's some dates there on screen. So there's one in October this year, one in Feb, and one in October next year. And there are also 2028 dates as well. And then I'm privileged enough each year to lead our Uganda Wildlife Photo Safari, which is a 13-day trip. It features Chibali, well, Mbamba Swamp for the Shoebills, Chibali. It features Ishasha sector, and it features Bwindi as well. It's a really fantastic trip, and I just recommend anybody go. It doesn't have to be with me, but if you haven't been before and you're thinking about it, do it. It's the ultimate wildlife encounter.
Well, thank you very much, Brett. That was absolutely fantastic. And just to echo what Brett said, Uganda really is one of those destinations that just leaves you with unforgettable memories. And again, as Brett said, seeing a gorilla for the first time is one of the most special experiences you can have. And it just, I'm sure you agree, Brett, it just goes in a flash. You get 1 hour with the gorillas and you can't believe it's over already. So
Yeah.
if you can get a couple of days in to trek for gorillas, I mean, I
Yeah.
personally would definitely recommend it. Yeah. Well, brilliant. So I've got a few questions for you, Brett. Mate, I think you've already confirmed this one, but I mean, you've got to wear face masks once you approach both gorillas and chimps, haven't you?
Yeah,
Um,
that's correct. Yeah, just to limit disease transmission.
and then on some of the group trips, someone asked about the split time between kind of mammal watching and bird watching. You will see them all around. Yeah, when I was there, I was fortunate enough to just see great blue churico, during the chimpanzee and gorilla treks and different bits like that. So they are around. Dietaries, do the lodges cater to vegans and vegetarians?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, perfect. And I think that's it for now. Unless I'm missing something. Okay, no, that's everything. I think we are done. So yeah. Thank you very much, Brett. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think if we head on to the next slide, I'll be back here on Thursday with my colleague Helen Bryan. She'll be talking about all of the wonderful things we can see in Indonesia, and I'll be hosting that one. And then next week we'll have another talk about Colombia. So please tune in for those. A big thank you to Brett for this evening, and yeah, we hope to see you all again soon. And yeah, thank you very much, and good night.
thanks very much.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everyone.